I did look up something. You asked me if I looked up something, like if I went looking for some information, but I didn't do it on YouTube, and that was in response to a comment. This guy and I got into a little bit of an argument about Matthew chapter 20 verses 14 and 15 about the laborers that work different amount of time and they all get paid the same amount of money. And he was saying that this, I think we came kind of to the same conclusion, or we were talking around the same conclusion, and it also had something to do with what Claire and I talked about, that people will get what they deserve in the afterlife, that the goal of the afterlife is to make sure that everyone gets what they deserve, is what she was trying to tell me. And I was telling her that no, that's, at least in Christianity, that is not the pattern, to not get what you deserve, but to have God glorified. And so, although I didn't use those words with her, but there's another pattern. It's not the justice pattern, or at least it's not only the justice pattern. And I don't think I made a dent in her presentation. So, but maybe I planted some idea there that might shake things up a little bit. So I went and looked up those verses, and my wife has some theological library, so I looked it up in the Greek-English interlinear New Testament, and the Greek part was very Greek, and it pretty much said what I read in the NIV version, and so I didn't really find out anything different than what I was expecting to find. So, but it was nice to have the book on the shelf that I could look it up.
Oh, that's all. Very nice. And okay, that's an interesting. What was the disagreement with the person that you were discussing on the internet?
I think it was the same. It was the same issue, that there will be like an ultimate justice, and I think he was coming at it from like political justice, that the outcomes. We have this thing going on with wokeness and social justice, that the outcomes need to be equal. Everyone's outcomes need to be equal, and that a correct view of ultimate justice includes ultimate justice, or is based on ultimate justice. But the Christian view, as I understand it, with the work of Jesus, is actually that people will get things better than they deserve, so that God heals them, or completes them, or makes things right. And make things right is different than ultimate justice. Those two things are not the same. To see people punished the way they should be punished, or rewarded the way they should be rewarded, is a different goal than making things right.
Yeah, I just would be careful when explaining the Christian view, to do not make the case too strong against a certain retributive view of justice, because even that is not really denied by Christian doctrine. There is a more subtle distinction where we understand that the grace that we received from Christ through faith in Him is not proportional to our own action. So there is nothing that we can do to deserve the grace of God. So in that sense, that's why we call grace, and not a wage or a simple retribution, because there is nothing that we could do that will merit eternal life. But nonetheless, even in eternal life, the principle of justice is not denied in the merit of what we actually have done. Because it remains the case that God took account of everything that we thought, we said, and we do. So even if in heaven everybody receive, the fact that we will be in heaven means that everybody there has received grace. That doesn't mean that the particular retribution, however we want to imagine it be, is going to be the same. Because there is a difference in things that everyone has done. And the same with the punishment. Now there is because the principle of justice is not something that is completely abolished by the grace of God. It's not. There is the idea that, as James says in the letter of James, mercy triumph over judgment. But it's not that there is an affront made to justice by that superabundance of mercy. It's that simply grace was not a matter of retribution. That's the point. That's the whole point. That was not proportionate to our own action, and we are receiving it by the work of Jesus Christ. So that's the only thing that there will be. If I have the time to go further in the topic, that's what I will mention.
It is complicated. I think it's probably more complicated than I can understand to some degree, which that's not a very high bar. So it is complicated. Did we lose Mark? All right. Yeah, and it's interesting to think about. And the man brought up the example of that parable where the people work for different lengths of time and they all get paid the same wages. And that is a shocking parable, because when you read it, you're in the way it's formed is in a labor wages type of environment. So the people who start the job at the beginning, and even the explanation that they're given at the end, is in a labor wages type of conversation. But in the middle of the labor wages conversation, then you get the grace element where the people who didn't work hardly at all get this great gift in receiving things that they didn't earn. And then the people who were under the impression that it was all about labor and wages are affronted by that. And I think it's kind of masterfully put together, where with this kind of curveball, because those two things are going on in the world all around us at the same time, and it's very difficult to even sift them apart from each other. So the Bible says that rain falls on the just and the unjust, and so there's things going on that we think we have earned, but maybe it's just the patterns that we see, that it's always there. And so our understanding of what's going on, it might be grace from top to bottom, and we don't see it that way. And it becomes then a very much a motion of faith to see this as an understanding, because it's, or at least I find it a challenging thing to put into any kind of action. And I'm sure that I'm not necessarily a good, well, I know I'm not a good example of always following that path, just like other good paths that I know about. But it's very, it's very tricky, and not tricky as in like deceptive, but it's just the way that parable is put together, I think cements in my mind that I have a problem even putting in my thinking into a mode of grace instead of into a mode of works. The way I think in general is that the way Claire says that the good should be rewarded with good and evil should be rewarded with evil, and that's the way things ought to be. And so convincing myself otherwise is difficult and maybe impossible, but it's something I think I should aim to do more of. So then I see something like the kind of the wokeness, where we have a social justice thing, and that is asking me to do a good thing, which is kind of have justicey, but also have like gracie things built in. Like I'm supposed to give gracie things to people who have mitigating circumstances and things. And it's like, yeah, I should be giving out more grace, but also I should be more justicey, where the good people are rewarded and people with bad behavior are remonstrated or whatever. But it all so easily goes wrong because it's a very fine balance, and we don't have all the information necessary to know how to weight the various elements that are in the picture.
I think that there is you can read the parable from the point of view of God, the master, the landowner, and his gift that is talking about grace, is giving grace. So in that sense, you see, for instance, that everyone is different. That's the reality of mankind. Everyone is different, and everyone participates in a different way to the work in the kingdom or in the vineyard, let's say. But the master is pleased to give to each one denarius, one grace, and that was you can understand that as exactly that picture of his grace, and not of the retribution for the work. But even if you understand it as a retribution for work, there is an agreement that is put forward at the beginning, in which the master is still giving to each worker according to the agreement in which they enter at the beginning of the, let's say, work relationship. So there is no cheating in that involved. What emerged by the end is that our generosity, the generosity of us as worker, not equal or comparable to the generosity of our master. So even with resources that are not our own, we feel kind of cheap. That's I think is at least for me, it's a big moral lesson for the parable. That we can be cheap even with the wealth of God. That as if it is something that is limited or in some way is going to harm us if it is given more to others than ourselves.
Right. And the laborer story has an implied goal that the master wants to get his fields harvested, and so he has a goal that's different than being fair to his laborers, and maybe even the money to a certain degree. And so his the people who are doing the labors don't really see the goal from the master's point of view, and their goal is to maximize their income from the amount of effort that they put in. And so the value system that the master uses is different, quite a bit different than the laborers. And so the laborers say, why did these guys get more money and they didn't do as much work? it's seeing it from the laborer's side and not from the master's side. I think that also is a good lesson as part of the parable, that there's more, there is like a higher purpose going on, and we don't necessarily find ourselves enlisted in furthering that higher purpose. We're more likely to be enlisted in furthering our personal purpose. So they were affronted that, and they were affronted because, well, the guys who weren't there very long got paid first, and they got paid a whole bunch, and then the guys that were there all day got paid the same amount, and they were like, how come you were generous with them, but you weren't generous with me? And his response is, well, it's my stuff, I can give it whoever I want to. All of that is like from where each person is standing, they have a complaint to make, or a goal to be furthered. And maybe that's the best result I should get out of that, is that if I'm seeing it from my personal outcome, that I'm not seeing the picture that I should be seeing.
Well, it can be it can apply to many things, the story, if we look at it from different angles. I will create unfairness in the action of the master, because the story remarks that that was the price that the early worker agreed upon to work for the whole day. So they didn't receive less than what they agreed to. Nobody received less than what they agreed to. What they are perceiving as an injustice, and that's it's a very important human universal feeling that we should notice. What they perceive as an injustice, that somebody received more than them.
Right. And like that zero-sum attitude, like you talk about, that's taking from me if I gave it to him.
You can understand that as a mercy triumphing over judgment, as I mentioned before. It's because it's general. He can be as generous as he wants with his own grace, his own gift. That is not unfairness. That is not injustice. But how is that not injustice? It's predicated on the fact that there wasn't let's say a different agreement, or on a cosmological anthropological sense, there isn't something that we as human being or creation as a whole was at the beginning. How is it in English? God did not own nothing to creation. In the sense, God was not in debt to anything in creation or to any human being. There was never a human being or a being in absolute that was that had some credit toward God. Never. So there is never a situation in which somebody can bring the receipt to God and telling him, look, this is what I did, and this is what is lacking. This is what I didn't get from life. That is not the case, because everything starts from a position of being in debt to God, even if we are just talking about existence. If you exist, you are already in debt to God for your existence. So you're never going to be in credit with God. But in spite of, the God is still overabundant. Even if he didn't own nothing to, is that the word? If he didn't, he was in debt with us or with anything, he still decided to be generous. But on the contrary, there is the ideological sense for many that because everything and everyone is different, there is already an injustice there being perpetrated either by nature or by God, if they believe that God created nature. So if you believe that because there is difference already, that is an injustice, then you want the equal outcome is not grace, is that rectification of an existential injustice that was already occurring at the moment of coming to be, because you came to be as different, as unequal to everyone else. And that's, if you understand that as from this other ideology, then you shake your fist at nature. You want that injustice to be undone through an equal outcome. But that's, you see, it's very anti-Christian as a cosmology.
I'm inclined to stop there.
Right.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'll stop there. It was nice to talk to you this morning.
You too, man.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I found this profoundly upsetting. Usually, I I sort of know what people are going to say, but I just don't understand this. So yesterday, I was saying that if God exists, the Abrahamic God who created the universe and sent divine revelation. Sorry, I'm just fiddling around with the description. I don't know why it's not working. Okay, maybe I can do it later or something, but I just wanted to add something in the description, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Okay, I guess I have to give it up. I have to give up the idea for the moment. I don't want to add channels. Update titles. There it is. I wanted to put the link to Chris's stream there. And I'm recording it because I know he deletes his streams. So let me explain what my problem is. After I end the display for some reason. Okay. Okay, I don't know how to remove this last comment that I displayed. But if I take my time, and I hope you will bear with me, I just want to just understand all the workings, and since it's just one person, I think I will try to do things slowly so I get to understand all the features and use them correctly. Okay, now I got rid of that comment. So, if you believed in God, you would expect good to be rewarded and evil punished in this life and the next, because that's the whole purpose of God. If God was a creation of man, the idea of this absolutely powerful God who would be on your side if you're good and would be punishing your enemies if they're bad is crucial to your sense of well-being. So I'm saying as mortal and fallible individuals, we are attracted to the idea of a being who is absolutely powerful, absolutely perfect, never does anything wrong, and will make everything right in the end. So the best case scenario is that good will be rewarded and evil punished, measure for measure. If not in this life, then the next. What is the problem? Why do these Christians have to talk around it and say, I might get there and I won't like it because I see people there that I don't think deserve to go to heaven, and then it would just spoil things for me, and this would be terrible, and I don't want to go there. I think all this kind of I'm just imagining heaven and all these people who don't deserve to be there, they're there. And I don't want to go there if these disgusting individuals could even be there. So on the one hand, you get these leftists these people who are Christian universalists saying everybody gets to heaven, and you can imagine the traditional Catholics and everyone thinking, well, then what was the point of me obeying God's laws if everybody gets in? What's the fucking point? And maybe this is what Chris and Tunji were talking about. But aren't they presupposing that God is going to get it wrong because he's just another guy like us, mortal and fallible? Actually, there's a song, right? There's a song about God being, what if God is one of us? I think you know that song. And it is a disgusting song, of course. Who sang that? I mean, I don't want blasphemy laws, but so, even as an agnostic, I'm just kind of getting a bit triggered by all their nonsense. So let me read you the song, What If God Was One of Us, by Alanis Morissette. If God had a name, what would it be? And would you call it to his face if you were faced with him and all his glory? What would you ask if you had just one question? Yeah, God is great. Yeah, God, good. Yeah. What if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us, just a stranger among us, trying to make his way home. If God had a face, what would it look like? And would you want to see? If seeing meant you had to believe in things like heaven and in Jesus and the saints and all the prophets? Yeah, God is great. Yeah, God is good. Yeah. What if God was one of us? Just a slob like one of us, just a stranger among us trying to make his way home. Just trying to make his way home, back up to heaven, all alone, nobody calling on the phone, except the Pope, maybe in Rome. Yeah, God is great. Yeah, God is good. Yeah. What if God was one of us, just a slob like one of us, just a stranger among us trying to make his way home? Just trying to make his way home like a holy rolling stone, back up to heaven all alone, just trying to make his way home, nobody calling on the phone except the Pope, maybe in Rome. So, well, I think it's a peculiarly Christian thing, because Christians think God is a man dying on a cross. And I guess that makes them never able to learn the wisdom of fearing God. The beginning of wisdom is fear of the Lord, and these so-called Christians, they're already saying, well, I don't want to go to heaven. It'll be full of, people I hate. And ultimately they're saying, we have a better religion because we don't mind suffering. And you think, yeah, you can have a kind of moral superiority, We're not looking for anything from God. We're not looking for good to be rewarded or evil punished. Perish the thought. Who would want such a thing, right? So they're saying, oh, if I get to heaven, I wouldn't ask for anything. I'm just so grateful for my life. I ask for a hut in heaven. I wouldn't want palace or a 5-star hotel or any of that sort of thing that everybody expects, because I think everybody expects, paradise to be a luxury holiday resort with beautiful waiters, beautiful waitresses, nice things to eat and drink, and wine that never gets you into trouble, and soft furnishings and cushions and sofa. And yes, cushions of brocade, fine dining, elegant designer clothes. So that's actually the paradise that the Quran describes. Oh yes, water features. So yeah, it sounds pretty good to me. But these people are just saying, I'm not going to like it if anybody is there that I don't like. It would just spoil it for me, just utterly ruin it. And I tried to explain yesterday that, I mean, just supposing we bumped into Hitler, and we might very well think, what are you doing here? How come you got in? Right? That's the natural question that will come. And I was saying, okay, if he were there, because there is this heresy of Christian universalism. It is actually declared to be a heresy way back in the 6th century. So, it's nothing new. And of course, it's outrageous. How can there be no distinction between good and evil? Just because the church wants to get everybody into worship every Sunday? I don't even know. But of course, it's outrageous. I mean, just as outrageous as good students who worked hard and studied for their exam and handed their homework in on time, being told that they failed like everyone else because God just couldn't be bothered to mark the examination papers properly, or be told that everybody gets an A. I mean, obviously that's wrong, isn't it? It's unfair. We can, we can feel already angry about this idea. And of course, if heaven is like that, we don't want to be there. We would, have a few complaints to make with the management. But then, what is the point? What is the point of believing in God, or saying you believe in God, and having all these thoughts like, well, I don't want to go to heaven. It's full of people I don't like, and this is really the clue that these Christians are functionally atheists. They do not believe in the afterlife. That's why they're able to say these things, without even thinking about it. Now, you know what Jews say about emunah and bitachon. I think I need to explain it to you. So Jews are very rigorous in their faith. So it's not enough for them to believe that God exists. They have to know. They have to know that God exists, presumably to make them, do all the things that they need to do as a Jew while being hated and blamed for everything. So they have to know that God exists, and they have to believe that good will be rewarded and evil punished. Otherwise, there's no point, right? What's the point of, following a religion that gets you hated and is so restrictive? So I guess Jews have a higher standard of belief and practice than Gentiles, because we already know that what is kosher is halal, but what is halal is not kosher, because Jews think they're so superior that Gentile standards will never be good enough for them. I mean, fair enough, if that's what they think, but they can suffer their they can continue to suffer their restrictive religion. So they have this idea of emunah and bitachon, and emunah is basically belief, or if you prefer, knowledge of God's existence. And then, more than that, they also have to believe that God will, in his wisdom and his mercy and his perfect morality, decide things for the best. They have to believe in both, right? And they, and a good example of, I mean, they also say, well, some people have belief in God, but they don't have faith in God that he will do what is best for all concerned. So they gave the example of Lot's wife, who was very annoying, and one of the things she did, sorry, not Lot, Job's wife, right? So in the book of Job, she was very annoying, and she said, when Job was sort of going through all his trials and tribulations, his boils and skin diseases and all sorts, and she said to Job, Mrs. Job said to Job, "Why don't you just curse God and die?" And this statement meant that she did acknowledge the existence of God, but she didn't have this thing called bitachon, which is the idea that God will, in the end, restore Job. And the story was that he was, in the end, restored, and he was restored without Mrs. Job. And I think he got a better wife or something. But I haven't read it, so don't just take my word for it. So the idea is that we have to believe that God is going to resolve everything to the moral satisfaction of any reasonable person. Now, we could say that it might just be fair enough if we bumped into Hitler in heaven and asked him what he was doing there, and he said, well, they made me die 6 million deaths, one after the other, without a single pause. And I think I have, repaid my debt to Jewry. And anyway, I got them the state of Israel, didn't I? Because without the Holocaust, well, nobody would care what Jews were moaning about. But because it was such a big thing, they got their homeland back. And Ben Gurion Airport should perhaps be called Adolf Hitler Airport, just to acknowledge the foundations of the modern state of Israel. Because obviously the Allies won against Hitler, America joined the war, and America is a marine empire like the British Empire, and every global empire wants a slice of Israel's ass. And because Israel occupies a space that is the crossroads between Africa and Asia and Europe, and it faces the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, and it's close to the Suez Canal, and it's the unsinkable aircraft carrier of America. So, of course, America would want it, and that's why it's spending so much money, because it can, use Israel as a base to keep an eye on the oil and the Arabs and project its power in the Middle East and bully Iran and Syria and Turkey and so that is the geopolitical purpose of Israel. And if you're inclined to be reasonable about Israel, or just take a different view of the Jews instead of blaming them for everything. You could say, well, they were roped in to fight and die for American imperial interests, and they don't even know. They don't even know. They're being used as a human resource. Cannon fodder. The Jews are cannon fodder for Uncle Sam. And they don't even know it. They think they're being so special and so Jewish and living in Israel, and all the time they're just there to people its colony of Israel. You could think of Jews like that. I did try to put it this way to a few nationalists, and they went ape because obviously I was. It, this narrative is heretical to um, the the narrative of anti-Semites, and their narrative is Jews destroyed our civilization. They destroyed Christendom. They caused the French Revolution. All kinds of things. So when you put it to them like that, with all these historical and geopolitical reasons, they get very angry, and then eventually they block you. And this is very sad because obviously they can't have an honest and reasonable discussion about anything. And this person, this nationalist, is not even Christian, but he was whinging about Christianity being destroyed, and I was saying it should be destroyed because it's like food unfit for human consumption. It's like a parachute that has killed all these parachutists because it never opens, but it keeps being used again and again and again, and nobody cares. So I'm saying this is what Christianity is. And in their pride, in their chauvinism, they can't take it in. And now, they're saying good rewarded and evil punished. The very idea. Well, what a terrible idea. That's what I hear. Do you hear it too? I mean, I thought that I thought everybody would agree with me. Yes, they would like to think that good will be rewarded and evil punished. Wouldn't and if you didn't, there must be something wrong with you. There must be, you must be an evil person because you don't want your evil to be punished, and therefore you don't want anybody's good to be rewarded as long as you get away with your evil, and it makes no sense. So I really think Christians are functionally atheist, and I think they are they are quite dangerous. They are dangerous because they are nihilists and atheists, and they pretend that they're good people and believe in God, but and you tell them like, well, it's a mortal sin, right? If you want to avoid hell, you have to avoid mortal sins, and if you're guilty of them, you have to repent. I will be back in a minute. Do you guys want to come on? Okay, I'll play some music, and I will put the link, and I'll play some music. Hi. Hi, Sunrise. Can you hear me?
Hello, Clay.
Hello, Sunrise.
How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I just went to get a coffee.
I think you're doing good work.
Thank you. Thank you. It's so nice to hear an encouraging word when it's so rare. And it's good to
Yeah.
meet you.
Something I wanted to ask you just brought up. You were
Mm-hmm.
saying that Britain uh, defeated the Nazis, supported the Jews, and um, something I heard from do you know Curtis Yarvin?
Yes.
I was listening to a podcast that he was on over a year ago now, and he was talking about the war in Ukraine, and he asked the question, was World War II good for Britain? And he sort of said, like, it's only really good for you if you win. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And he said
Makes
World
sense.
War II was bad for Britain, but he said it was
Mm-hmm.
good for the Jews. So it's like
Well, they got their
go on,
well, they got Israel because of the Holocaust, right?
right. It's quite a
But
different way of looking at it though, right? Like you
of
can see,
course.
like I can see like many Christians in Britain, they like um they think it was like a good thing to like this idea like sacrifice, Jesus self-sacrifice is like central to their worldview that like sacrificing for others or whatever is like a good thing. And most Brits, when you ask them, was it good that we went to war, World War II? They say, yeah, it was great. They don't even really consider the consequences of it. Whereas if you, from like a non-Jewish perspective, you'd think the Jews would be like horrified that that happened to them, and yet they can say it was like a good. Do you know what I mean? Strange.
Yeah, there's actually Rabbi Avigdor Miller, who Rabbi Mizrahi. I don't know, you may have heard of him because he was recently talking to Adam Green. Have you heard?
Right.
Um, I mean, Rabbi Mizrahi is just talking to all the anti-Semites and Muslims and everything, and I think that's a great thing. Um, because he wins all the arguments really, because he is a fundamentalist. And actually I do I have to admit that I learned a lot about Judaism from him, because he doesn't compromise the principles. He's just saying, well, that's what it says. So and he gives reasons for um anyway, you might enjoy his talks. He's got quite a big channel. He speaks English. He tells quite good stories, and they make sense. And the liberal Jews hate him
Yeah.
because um, he's not a liberal at all, and he hates these liberal Jews anyway, and calls them lefty liberal traitors. And what I was going to say, oh yes, Avigdor Miller, it has a Wikipedia entry saying that the Holocaust was a mercy to Jews,
I
which
know,
is a
right?
really extreme statement, right? You've heard of it?
I own his book. He wrote a book called
Oh,
Divine Madness,
okay. Well,
and
that's more than I have.
Clay, some of the stuff he says in this book is mind blowing. He says he puts the number at 10 million, right? And then he says that it was a result of the Enlightenment, where Jews left the ghetto, and as a result of that, they like wanted to be a bit less Jewish, and they picked up all these false beliefs,
From the
heresies, and whatever
Christians.
from the
Yeah,
Christians, trying to
yeah.
fit in. And he says that God, like, he pretty much like makes the analogy of like having to do an operation on a child, where you might have to take his arm off to save his life. And so he says God just like performed the operation and cut out all these heresies. And then, but what he said, but God left one heresy, Zionism. That's what he says. Oh my God. It was like, obviously I'm not a Jew, so it doesn't really affect me. I can just imagine a Jew reading that, especially like a liberal Jew, and how emotional it must be to hear someone like a scholar say, actually, that needed to happen, and if you don't stop, God forbid it'll happen again. You know what I mean? Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, but it fits in the narrative of the meaning of suffering, right?
Yes.
You suffer because you're being punished for sin,
Yeah.
or you are suffering because you're being tested, like Job, to see if you deserve anything better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are two explanations, and if we accept them, then maybe we would be more prepared to accept our suffering without, going reaching out for a pill to take for our depression or whatever.
Do you I know you bring up the book of Job a lot, and I know that you know probably know a lot more about than me about Judaism. Um, what what are there any sort of, obviously I'm a Muslim, right? I believe in the Quran, thank God.
Hmm.
But is there any particular books other than Job in the Bible that I could point to for that would help me spiritually, and that I can point, because all my family's Christian, so I want to um point them to their own book and say, look, try to reconsider what you believe. Is there anything you can advise me on?
Well, I mean, for Christians, really, idolatry is a problem, because if you're an idolater, you won't be taking any of the laws of God seriously, right? Because I mean, Jews are supposed to take the Torah seriously, and the rules in Leviticus and Deuteronomy. And if you're Muslim, you take the laws. You take Sharia seriously. But these Christians, I mean, historically, when they try to do it, like John Calvin, like, well, we'll have to use some of the laws in the Torah. They will be accused of being a Judaizer,
Right.
and that would be a very bad thing to be. Well, it's dangerous. Like once upon a time, it was very dangerous to be a Christian theologian, because you might get accused of heresy and be burnt at the stake. I mean, that was how bad things were, right?
Yeah.
And and that's why so many Europeans, for economic reasons as well. I mean, they went to America because of there were plenty of endless wars in Europe as well, and and also a lot of religious persecution. That was it when they were all white and Christian.
Yeah.
But so I'm saying Christianity is a really bad thing for white people, and the people who want to use it for Christian nationalism, they don't understand their own history. I think they probably think, oh, it was nice when we were crusaders slaying, Jews and Saracens in the Levant, and we'd like to do that again, kind of thing.
Yeah. They have
I
like
think that's how they think. Is that shallow?
they have like a myth of a golden age,
Yeah.
Is it I don't, but so like I said, I believe in the Quran, right? But you'll know that there's a lot of different Muslims out there, right? And I like to listen to all types of people, right? And
Hmm.
I'll take what's good from one, and I'll leave what I don't agree with, right? But do you
Hmm.
think that the history of persecution of heretics in Europe sort of, because the parts of my family that are very religious, they won't entertain any difference of opinion. You know what I mean? So do you think that
Hmm.
that history have sort of like seeped in, where they just believe one thing and they just don't, like, they won't entertain critical thought outside of um because they got this idea that like anything out and no salvation outside of the church, but obviously it's always their church. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing is, they would know. I mean, if you listen to these Christians, it's like, well, how would you know? How would you know what's going to happen to heaven? Maybe you're not even going there, so stop talking like you're, one of the, what's the word? ushers of heaven or something, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, they talk like they already know what's going to happen and it's all going to be wrong and they're going to hate it. But I suppose, I mean, for Christians, you could say, well, you know what Jews and Muslims think of you. They think it's idolatry to worship a man, and you know, isn't that a problem? I mean, have you resolved that in your own mind? And then, of course, the Trinity is a can of worms. But I guess if you want to do it in a more gentle way, um, you could, I guess, whenever they complain about the government, and doesn't everybody complain about the government these days? You can say, well, Sharia would solve this problem. Sharia would solve that problem. You know,
Right.
so there would be two ways to kind of, you know, nice cop, nasty cop kind of thing.
I hope you don't mind me asking this. And if it's, tell me where to go. Okay. Um.
Sure.
In one of the streams you done maybe a couple of days ago, I asked if you was like British. You said I see five, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've looked at past videos you've done, and you're Chinese ethnically, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do Christians in the East tend to be like Christians in the West? I don't look to divide the Chinese people or anything like that. I'm just asking from like a Western point of view.
Sure. I actually didn't know about how differently Christianity is sold to, you know, non-European peoples. But um, some years ago, I took my a male English friend of mine to this to a Mandarin class, and he met this Chinese Christian, and she was so happy to meet somebody, you know, English who was kind of approachable, and and so she thought she'd finally met a Christian Englishman, and so she was asking him all kinds of eager questions, and my friend was basically saying, well, yeah, I was in the school choir because I like singing and I sang well, and um, but I don't really believe in any of it. You know
Wow,
that's
wow.
it. But she wasn't one who was going on Jesus is Lord, Jesus is Lord, and I was thinking that this is really quite strange, until I realised that the only way you could show that you were Christian is to say that, whether or not you believed in it. You know, because you know it's like, well, Muslims,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
say things like kind of, you know, identify themselves as Muslim by saying alhamdulillah and, you know, all the other Arabic
yeah,
phrases, and and Christians do that too, and recently a Christian woman who worked in a church was saying that all these sort of children I kind of, you know, teach at Sunday school and after school and stuff, but you know, I don't think they really believe. They're just sort of, you know, speaking like that to, you know, be one of the gang. But she was saying, I don't really believe in it. And anyway, by the time they finish, you know, their school, I'll never see them again. You know,
yeah,
and they're just using church as a babysitting, you know, childcare, you know, thing.
yeah.
And I was saying, oh, don't worry, when they have children, you know, they'll come back, kind of thing.
It does seem where I'm from Wales, and I'm the church seems to it used to be very local, where um obviously every town got a Catholic church, um and but most of the churches in my town are like Baptist and non-denominational.
Hmm. You have a Church
Um,
of Wales, don't you?
yeah, but it's like the Welsh Parliament. It's not really a thing.
Hmm.
Um, but so and I've been to one or two of these churches and they welcome me and they're all really nice, right?
Hmm.
But most of the congregation are like 60 plus, right?
Yeah, that's always a problem.
Yeah.
Mm.
And then, but my family, my younger brother's, he's been a Christian for like, say, 6 years, and he's really religious, but he doesn't go to any of the churches in the town. You know what I mean? He's like
Mm-hmm.
he found his own group like outside, like 2, 3 towns away,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's not really like it's not actually a community. Like you used to have like a local, like you villages used to be built around the church parish sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the youth that are Christian today don't tend to be local. Like have you heard of um there's like a thing in among Catholics, like some of them love the Latin Mass. And so
Mm-hmm.
they'll travel like 10 miles just to go and get the Latin. And so it's
Yes.
like it's not actually like even if they wanted to say, oh well, community, family, and all this sort of stuff, you can't really have those things if you're going 10 miles away to
You
go to
can't keep
church.
it up.
No, no. And it's like a society more than it's really strange. Like obviously I'm Welsh, I don't really I will if I happen to be like there's no mosques in my town.
Mm-hmm.
So if I happen to go to a city, I will visit the mosque. But
Mm-hmm.
it's not something that I would relocate for.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it does seem strange. It feels really weird speaking to Christians that where it's not part of European tradition to have to travel to go to church. You know what I mean?
Well, it's supposed to be local. I mean, I forget which English town I went to, but there was literally a church on every corner. You
Yeah,
know, it was just, I think somebody said, oh, there are more churches than pubs in this town, kind of thing.
yeah, yeah.
And there are quite a lot of pubs already. So, so once upon a time, it was a kind of it was a social club, really, wasn't it? It's sort of like, actually, the Jews were saying, we have no unity. We go to a synagogue, and then the members fall out with each other, and they just, open another one a few doors down the road, and it's easy to do that. And and so they say, it's really a religion of social clubs, and in fact it's the same for even Muslims too, right? Muslims, of the same um, area, and also, from the same, um, maybe, they all come from the same village, or same country or something, and they would just go to, where they find most familiar, where people speak their, Urdu, or whatever it is that they speak. um, but yeah, it's supposed to be universal. But the thing is, it doesn't help us, does it? It doesn't help us that okay, these people get all these social clubs, and then they does any behavior change? And also, what are we going to do with all the crazy laws that come out of Parliament and Congress? They have nothing to say about that, of course. And of course, in America, it's like it doesn't even matter if you all become Catholic or whatever, because Congress will say, well, in this country, there is a separation of church and state. And so it doesn't matter if all Americans are Christian, demanding this or that. Congress will still do whatever it wants,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
that's the law, that's a constitution.
It's complicated and it's difficult.
Yeah, I mean, E. Michael Jones, you've heard of him, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So he was actually telling Catholics, it's like, no, go to your local Catholic church, because he noticed that some Catholics, and you just mentioned it, they have to travel to go to their Tridenta, the Latin Mass, and then they look down their noses at other Catholics who have to put up with Novus Ordo, which is the newfangled worship, and he was saying, no, you just have to go to your local church, and do your best there. But even then, is it good advice? I mean, I think it's political, and you have to actually ask for the laws that you want to make your society better, or the political system, even if it's no longer delivering on leaders who care about the people or the national interest.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel sorry for the Americans. They worked so hard thinking Trump was going to, stop the endless wars and stop the immigration. And he's just, that's what they all do. They break their promises and,
Do you think that, let's say hypothetically, we have the Quran is the law, the way you understand it, right?
mhm,
Across all of America, all of Europe, Canada, Australia, all of the West, right?
mhm.
Do you think there would be provisions to halt immigration?
Well, I mean, to be fair to our corrupt and incompetent leaders, they're just not doing. I don't think they're doing it to upset white people. It's sort of like, well, there's a labour shortage. We can't wait 16 years for them to have enough babies and put them through, school and be school leavers. And, it's like, we want them now. We
Yeah,
can't wait 16 years so once you have a few of them here, then you think, oh, well, maybe a few of them there won't, do make any difference. And then, suddenly the world and his dog are already here. And of course, we have to manage their behavior now that they're here,
yeah,
so that you can, live peacefully with them. And even if you want to get rid of them, how are you going to get rid of them if you don't have, a hierarchy of, well, whose orders you're going to listen to and whose leadership you're going to respect? And
yeah,
and I find that a lot of people are just sort of instinctively saying, I would trust any leader. So they're basically saying, I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't stick my neck out. Yeah, I'll talk shit on the internet about this group and that group, but to follow any leader, no. Because they're also useless and they betray you anyway. If you look at any history in the yeah in British nationalism. They always crash and burn, and they never really deal with the problems. And I think that the problem is this: they never deal with middle class issues because it's always the people at the bottom who have to share their you know neighborhoods with the new arrivals who feel it worst and feel it most. And but nobody cares about them, right? So all these class divisions of of England, Britain, they come into play. It's like, well, we're not going to even entertain these ideas because then people will call us racist and nationalist. So middle class people with a lot to lose, they would not be seen dead. Supporting, the BNP. UKIP maybe, but even UKIP was getting a lot of flack, right? Because
yeah,
UKIP kind of started off as the Conservative Party in exile kind of thing.
yeah. And it's
I mean, look what they did to Tucker. He was the most respected journalist, and now they're calling him a Nazi,
yeah.
just because he asked a few questions about Israel.
I'm I'm not like pro Hitler or anything like that, right? God knows. But why do you think that that word has such like an emotive effect? Like it seems to be like oh, there are people on the left sort of thing that would be called like Stalinist or communist or whatever, but it doesn't quite have that sting. You know what I mean? Why do you think that is?
Well, um, I think people are obsessed with Jews, right? It's like, oh, there's so few of them, and all these Hollywood movies, and also if you're religious, right? Christians worship a Jew,
Right,
and the Quran is full of references to the children of Israel, and of course you'd expect the Jews to be obsessed about themselves.
of course. Yeah,
And I know sort of Chinese people. Okay, there's this YouTuber, and he was living in China, and he was saying, he married this he has a Chinese wife, and he was telling the story about his mother-in-law, and saying, "Oh, you come from New York. Are you one of those, special people, the Jews?"
Wow.
And then she said, and then she was disappointed when she realized that her son-in-law was a Gentile and not a Jew. It is sort of like a kind of like leprechauns or something.
Yeah.
Magic.
It's something it is something like mystical about them, right? Not like in a bad way or like a way to like point at Jews or anything like that. But like I'm from the UK, right? So I don't really know anything about. I got little to no knowledge about like Chinese history. It would be like it's mind blowing to me that in China they seen us like you said, like a leprechaun. You know what I mean? Yeah, strange.
Yeah, apparently there were lots of self-improvement books, like how to do business like a Jew, and
Wow.
be more. That's what I heard, and
Yeah.
there are Jewish studies in certain Chinese universities. So, but there's a kind of mutual rivalry, because I think the Chinese and the Jews have been around for roughly the same time. So
A
I
long
guess the
time now.
Jews are saying, how come you're so many and we're so few? And then the Chinese say, how come you're so few and you're so powerful?
Yeah.
That sort of
Right.
thing, I guess.
Yeah. Strange. I'm
Mm.
from a town in Wales. You obviously know the NHS, right?
Mm-hmm.
The NHS was started in my town, and it was started in the year 1911. This is before World War One, but it was started locally.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason they set it up was because early in the year, um, prices in the shops went up, like just local like groceries and stuff like that, right? And so about 50 to 100 local miners, they was like peasants, you know what I mean? They didn't really have a choice. They had to be um, miners. They were in a pub and they said, look, I'm sorry, we can't keep putting up with these prices, right? And it turned out that at the time,
You're kind of cutting out a bit, and you're telling a bit of a complicated story. I just want to let you know that I don't seem to be getting every word you're saying.
sorry,
It
can you hear me
started
now?
from the Tredegar Medical
That's right.
Society, right?
Right.
In
Yeah.
1948,
90, well,
by Bevan.
Bevan, but that was later on, right? Originally,
Mm-hmm.
1911, it was a load of local companies, local shops run by Jews, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
they also owned a lot of property. They were landlords, and so a gang of miners got drunk in a pub and said, "Look, we can't keep putting up with this." So they burnt all of the Jewish properties in the town. The riots spread to like 4 neighboring
Mm-hmm.
towns, right?
Right.
Churchill had to
I
send the
didn't.
army in.
Right. I didn't know that.
I know, right? This is like
Mm-hmm.
this is very uncommon knowledge. You can Google it. So there's like a BBC article about it. So
Mm-hmm.
Churchill sent the army in to put the riots down, and the same year they set up
Right.
a local NHS to keep the um miners happy. To say like, all right, well, we can't keep the prices down, but if you get injured in work,
Mm-hmm.
you'll have free healthcare, and that's where the NHS come from. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
that had like a massive effect on like the politics of the country, and even like even just the idea that you've got to look after your neighbour and stuff like that. Um, it wasn't like the Jews' fault or anything like that. Both sides blame each other, of course. But it's strange
Mm-hmm.
that they were central to even that. It's strange. It's like they got a complicated history, haven't they? Yeah, really strange.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes, thank you. I'm sending the link about the Wikipedia link to the 1911 South Wales anti-Jewish riots. Yeah, I think if God exists, he's obviously programmed the Gentile to take it out on the Jews when they they suffer from bad government. And my position is basically, so Jews have an interest in getting Gentiles better government, and that's why they should rank the 4 Gentile religions according to their conformity with the Noahide laws. And actually, if you know a little bit of Judaism, they actually say, well, we're allowed to pray with Muslims in mosques because they're not idolaters, but we're not allowed to enter churches, which are places of abomination where idolatry is practiced. So, it's obvious which religion they should be supporting, right? If they were, wanting better government for us.
Yeah. And you think that...
But most of them are just totally assimilated, and they're liberal, basically.
We're in the town where that riot happened. If someone didn't tell you they're a Jew, we wouldn't know. You know what I mean? They don't dress like Orthodox or anything like that anymore. And it's because of that. Well, they'll tell you it's because of that riot. It's like 2 steps forward. It's like 2 steps backwards, 1 step forward, sort of thing, isn't it? Like anytime violence takes place, people retreat, and they're not as like. Have you ever heard of like prominent Jews sort of like putting that question to any European leadership? Like saying, look, just really consider this. Christianity's not the best. Maybe you should choose Islam. I never heard of that.
Well, I mean, I since 2020, when I got this idea that, if only the Jews would rank the 4 Gentile religions, because I know they don't really want to have anything to do with us, and they're a bit scared, because so I said, well, the best way to convey the message to Christians is to rank the 4 Gentile religions according to their conformity with the Noahide laws, and the result of this would be Islam would be the most Noahide religion. Are you familiar with the Noahide laws?
I watched some lectures on it, and I've asked some questions, but I've had some quite shocking responses from some rabbis I've interacted with. Go on.
So you have asked a rabbi some questions on
I'm
it.
aware of the
that's
laws,
great.
right? But I'm
okay. So I don't have to repeat them to you, but basically, if the rabbis would just do this thing, then Islam would be top of the tree, right? It's the most Noahide Gentile religion, followed by Buddhism, which at least has codified principles and is supposed to be an atheist philosophy. And then below that is Hinduism, because it has no codified principles and they're idolaters. And right at the bottom is Christianity, because they worship an executed blasphemer by their own account. It's not me saying that, because the Christian narrative is Jesus was executed for blasphemy. Yeah. And they worship a man they know to have been executed for blasphemy. And I'm saying it's right at the bottom. So Jews, I'm not saying, Jews should be going to Speaker's Corner and denouncing Christianity. It's like just post on social media. 1, Islam; 2, Buddhism; 3, Hinduism; 4, Christianity, and then people will say, what's all this about? What does it all mean? And then the answer is there, and they would actually have the attention of all these religious groups, adding who are, I think I checked up, 5.92 billion altogether, all these religious groups. So that's a majority of the people in the world, and they could do it, but they won't, because it's like, what you're proposing, Claire, is dangerous. Do you know what they did to us? This kind of, the Inquisition and blah, blah. And I said, well, they're not going to do this to you again, are they? But so, obviously they don't know, and anti-Semitism. But it's like, sometimes you actually have to fight fire with fire, right? And Rabbi Mizrahi is at least doing that. He's confronting the critics, and at least he's saying, well, I'm not a liberal lefty traitor. I'm not a liberal. I hate them as much as you do. And they hate me.
I don't I agree with everything you're saying, right? But so when I said to you that I interacted with this rabbi, he's not a bad person. I'm sure he didn't mean to like offend in any way. But we have this idea that there's just Jews and then the Gentiles, and the Gentiles are just one block, right? And
Well, that wouldn't be true either. It's sort of like saying the Americans are all MAGA or they're all liberals. I mean, that's. I mean, it's always insulting to anybody to say, they're always this and never that, and it's
what
not
I mean
completely
is,
true. But
without putting politics aside and religion, if we look at so I read the Bible, right? And if you look at the book of Genesis, it sort of lays out the genealogy of all mankind. And we know that Jews typically believe that. It's interesting. That Rabbi Mizrahi said that China can find their roots in Genesis as well, right? Anyway, there's a story of Esau and Jacob. Have you read that story?
a story of
Jacob and
Jacob,
Esau.
yes.
Yeah.
Jacob and Esau.
Something interesting about so what it is, right? I have red hair, right? And I was like looking at my own roots. And the only person given physical descriptions in the book of Genesis is Esau. Some of the names have meanings, like Japheth is supposed to be like pretty and stuff like that, right? So
All
I
right.
thought to myself, wow, red hair, what's that about? I've got to be significant, right? So anytime I go see like a Christian or Jew live doing like questions and answers, they always ask them, what's that about? What's that red hair about? So there's a YouTube channel for Noahides. Obviously, I'm a Muslim, right? Thank God. So there's this guy giving lectures, and so I asked him a question. I said, "Oh, what's that red hair about?" And this rabbi, he said that traditionally in Judaism, red hair is someone who's like ostracized, outcast, and he said they are. He said this is what he said. He said they bloodthirsty, destined to be murderers. I thought to myself, good God, I felt so much like obviously the beliefs of the Jews and Christians and whatever don't affect my relationship with God.
Well,
Thank God, right?
people discriminate against redheads, don't
Even
they?
in Britain today, you could
I mean, white people themselves don't like
we're
redheads
the only if you go to school in
or
Britain or
gingers.
gingers, I know, right? If you go to school in
Yeah,
Britain,
it's the same thing. Catherine Tate made a big thing of that.
everyone
If you've heard
it's
of
all
her.
yeah. But so what it is
Mm.
that if you go to school anywhere in Britain and you mock someone for um immutable characteristics, I would never mock you, right? I think, like I said, I think you're doing great work, and God bless you, right? But if someone mocked you for being Chinese, they'll get attention for that, right? If they mock someone who's black, you get attention for that. If you mock someone who's Polish, you get attention for that. But if you mock a redhead, the teacher will laugh with you,
Mm.
right? And I'm convinced that it's because of that narrative. I mean, what else would I mean? Think about it. In um under like Confucian values, there's no um symbology in the red hair. India don't suffer from this. The Arabs don't suffer from this because that narrative is not in the Quran, right? But Europe is like steeped in that. Now, and you think like Britain got the most redheads, so you'd think this would be like the best place to live. There's royal redheads in Britain. You think they would?
Mm.
You think that would come with some sort of like social benefits or something? But it's not. It's like completely the other way around. And it blew my mind that this rabbi just came out and said it. And I've never, and that was about a month ago, 2 months ago, and I can't stop thinking about it.
Well, I mean, it's actually quite bad. I had a female friend who was a redhead and told me she dyed her hair blonde because
I know.
it was so bad that she wouldn't get dates or people would hate her. And I remember years ago I was watching some children play in the playground, and there was this boy with the red hair, and the boy was running around and everything, and I was sort of feeling a bit annoyed at him because of his red hair.
Oh my God, Clay, what? He was feeling annoyed at him.
Yeah, just by looking at him, and I wasn't even sort of there. I was, sort of like, you're annoying. I don't know why, but just that red hair moving around. But then JFK was a redhead.
I know. Well, look what happened to him, right? I know. Oh. What do you? So are they? So I'm actually writing a book on this. It's going to be an amazing book, trust me. But so I've looked into it. Apparently, Genghis Khan was a redhead. Are there any? Do you know of any prominent redheads in East Asia?
I don't think so. I mean, it's normal to have black hair, but a lot of Asians are dyeing their hair funny colors, but that's just a fashion, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I think people, deep down, they sort of know. I don't know. It maybe red is just a sign of danger, and that's why people don't like it. It's not a soothing color.
Right. Yeah, because it's like.
But even if you're a redhead, it's like, well, one of these days it's gonna go grey, so you don't need to worry.
Well, yeah, I know, right? I'm doing a lot of research on it, and it goes deep. You know what I mean? But something that's strange as well is all the old, not all of them, but many of the old European myths and European gods were redhead. Do you know that?
Yeah.
Like Thor, Zeus.
Well, in Marvel Comics, he was a blonde, wasn't he?
That's a cultural appropriation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if you look at the books and old paintings, it's all red.
Mm-hmm.
Even Achilles in Greek myths, the original Achilles and Menelaus and Helen, they were all redheads. But when you see them in the movies, they're all blonde and brown.
Maybe it's something to do with Satan being portrayed as red.
I know, red, right? And there's not really any description of him being red in the books. It's just something I'm convinced it's from that Jacob and Esau story. Convinced. But and another funny thing is, I'm not. I know you said you don't really pay too much attention to the hadith, which is fine, right? There's a lot of problems I find in it as well. But something that's interesting is that those same hadith will tell you Muhammad was a redhead. Wow.
Well, some people say he's a Jew.
They say that because how many redheads do you find in the Middle East? And they just assume that, well, what it is something like 12% of Jews have red hair. And so they just assume.
Well, I mean, Jews are not supposed to be a particular race anyway. Yes, it is an ethnicity, but you can be black or Chinese or Asian and still be Jewish as long as you converted or your mum is a Jewess. Right. So they come in all four colors too, these Jews.
Yeah.
But of course, people just focus on the Ashkenazim because that's the one they're most familiar with, right? Yeah. I mean, it's the same like, Gentiles in the West, they focus on the liberal secular Jews because they would be the only kind of Jews they have any contact with at work and, whatever. So, and everybody kind of, thinks of Jews as their Jew as most representative, or their what's the word, their view of Jews.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's fair, really. But people can't help that. It's like, well, I met my Jew, and he or she was like this and like that, and
Have you had any interactions with rabbis?
Yes, well, actually, I'm going to boast that I spoke to Rabbi Sachs, the late Rabbi Sachs, twice.
Really? How did that
Yeah.
go?
It went well. I mean, I think the second time he was quite hostile, but he did answer my question anyway. The first time we got on like a house on fire, but I think the second time he must have known who I was. So the question I asked him the second time was, um, is Satan, does Satan work for God? Because the Orthodox Jews say Satan is God's prosecuting counsel.
Right.
He's working for God, right? And I thought, well, this is a very, very different view to the Christian one.
And what was his response?
Nobody would think, I didn't hear what you said. Hi, you're not very clear. I can't hear you.
Sorry, Claire. Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you. Yes, I can.
What was Rabbi Sachs's response to that question?
Yeah, he confirmed it. He said yes. Satan is seen as God's prosecuting counsel, but actually, the Book of the Lord's Prayer confirms this.
Right.
Because there's a line that says, "Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil." This is people praying to God, lead us. It's like, well, why would God want to lead us into temptation? Because Satan is doing his work.
Right. Yeah.
Given to him by God. And of course, the story of the book of Job begins with Satan and God having a conversation, right?
Right.
And it started with God saying, oh, look at Job, he's such a good guy and he's grateful, properly grateful for all the blessings I've given him, his wealth, his children, blah, blah, blah. And Satan said, well, would he be still thanking you if he were not enjoying his wealth? And yeah, so that's how the story began.
Yeah. It's interesting. Why do you think that Christians have a different narrative? Because it's quite like dualistic, right? He's the God of this world. That's what they say,
Well, I think Christians are basically they're discouraged from asking questions because they sort of know what was going to happen to them if they asked too many questions. They get burnt at the stake, and even in the form of worship, it's like we're going to be quiet. We're not going to be yes, a priest will say something, and we have a response, and you can do it if you want to participate in this performance, right? And I've been to these talks by Rabbi Sachs. And the Jews, they get really excited, and they're kind of like little children.
Yeah.
And he would ask them, they would ask him questions, and he would mock their their answers. So that there is a dialogue going on, and even with the East London Mosque that I visited regularly for a while, the men's and women's section are segregated, but the imam comes to the women's section. There is a screen, and he's there if any of the women want to ask him questions about stuff. And I thought it was quite cute. They used some hospital screen, and you could see his trainers. You could see his trainers, under the bottom of the screen.
Yeah.
And then you get the the eager beaver women who want to ask him all sorts of annoying questions right at the front of the class. You can imagine, and then the ones who some of them would be playing with their phones and putting on their makeup, but that was kind of how it worked. You would ask questions, and they were available to be questioned, but for Christianity, it's like, well, sit still and watch the show or be part of it. No questions, please, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But Christians put on a better show. I mean, it does look quite impressive.
Yeah, it's very artistic. It's very visual. Not like the priest. Well, even the priest, they dress up, don't they? Like very. It's very showy.
There is an element of showmanship,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Yeah. 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 And it's like that. Is it? Like I said, I don't know. I don't know if it's just like a Western, if it's just a European thing. I'm not sure. But the Russians do it as well, don't they?
Well, I think we have to understand that the priesthood has always been the support act of the absolute monarch, and all this showmanship comes from the Roman Catholic Church, right? And the Roman Catholic Church was is a remnant of Rome, and the Romans knew how to put on a show. The games, right? And
the theatre,
all their stuff. Yeah, so they knew how to put on a show, and obviously they would incorporate that into their church, and that's how you keep people coming, and obviously the music and the art, to make it beautiful, so people want to come and watch a show and smell the incense and be part of the show and sing and whatever. I mean, it's quite an attractive way of worship.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm not a Christian, but yeah,
you can
especially
appreciate
cathedrals.
it.
Yeah, you can appreciate it. Yeah, it is beautiful.
But I mean, no, I was just saying, but they have no kind of intellectual foundations. It's all about shut up and listen and do as you're told. That's how it's always been, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I read a book. Have we heard of a man called Francis Parker Yockey?
Yes.
Have we read his book, Imperium?
I haven't read it, but I know people who talk about him a lot.
His book. He's a Christian, and he talks about Europe and the history and philosophy, like the philosophy of history and politics. And he says that where we are right now is just part of the process. It's something we had to go through. Sort of like, don't worry, we're going to get through it, but it's going to require sacrifice to get through it. And essentially, say we need like a messianic leader to pull Europe out of this mess. But he says that he loves this idea of authority, and he says that it's like it got to be organic, where like you don't vote for your father, you know what I mean? And it's in the end, he pretty much says that it's like he doesn't say this explicitly, right? But you can just tell by the way he's speaking that he wants the authority to be spiritual, where it's like where the leader would have like a total. It's not. I'm not total in the sense that like the priest can tell you where, like what side of the road you can drive on, but it's sort of like he loves it. He sort of like when he talks about the Middle Ages, he says that Rome always had an emperor, and sometimes he was denied, and other times he was worshipped, but he was never ignored. You know what I mean? And so it's like this. And if you think of like the Catholic churches being part of like that spiritual, the part of the empire, you can tell that he's looking for this. Like they love that idea of the priest. You know what I mean? And it's like
I don't know how to explain it. I thought it was a beautiful book.
Well, it sounds like you're saying the idea of divine support for this revolutionary.
Yeah.
And basically all the prophets of God were revolutionaries, right?
Right.
That's what they were.
Yeah. And but one thing that he said in the book, and it's towards the end, he said, if we knew more about Mecca than we did about Rome, we would be Muslim, but all the wars would be the same. Which is,
Well, how would he
well,
know?
it's part of his like philosophy of history and how it works. He sort of it's a controversial topic, but he sort of says that different civilizations have different souls, where like so ancient Egypt, it rose and it fell, and then it was like Mesopotamia, it rose and it fell. Then it was the Aztecs, they rose and they fell. And Europe, or the West, he's saying it rose, but it's not dead yet. And he sort of says that they all went through the same process where towards the end, they had like an identity crisis where they forgot who they were. And their last major act was to just regain authority over everything it had. And he's saying it's wild. But I'm really interested in. Obviously, I'm European, thank God, right? But we're in a tough spot. Yeah.
Well, I go on the way I do because I think the solution is simple. It's like Christianity has come to the end of the line, but nobody will acknowledge it, and the
Yeah.
powers that be want Europeans to use Christianity and think they have a religion in Christianity, but it will just keep them stupid and divided and frightened and won't be doing what a religion is supposed to do. And I'm saying, the people who most keep their identity are Jews and Muslims because they have a book that tells them how to be Jews and Muslims. And even if they don't follow it properly, they still get this sense of identity through their holy book.
Right.
And it's, imperial objectives, because both Christianity and Islam are imperial religions. So, to the extent that Yoki was saying that, there will be imperial wars under Christianity or Islam, I would have to agree. But maybe Islam doesn't need to fight so many wars because it can already win the argument using reason and bargaining, right? Because actually Islam kind of wins because it's so reasonable, right? The bargain is so clear between God and man. I mean, Allah is just saying, well, follow my rule, and if you don't, you will fail and go to hell. And the Arabian Peninsula was so quickly Islamified was because there was this bargain. It's like, if I were this, I guess it was the Rashidun Caliphate, and they conquered all these, other Arab countries, and they said, well, you could pay us the jizya if you want to hang on to your religion, or you could convert to it. And they said, okay, well,
Right.
fair enough. I mean, obviously, your God, your Allah is more powerful than our pagan deity, so we accept defeat, and we don't want to pay the jizya, and we won't have to pay it, and we can attack country 3 over there. Let's go.
Yeah.
And it was a kind of domino effect of everybody converting to Islam because they didn't want to pay the jizya, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's I think you're right. Where it's like this, when you know it's God has told you to obey the rules. If you do it, you'll be fine. If you don't, you won't. It is that would give birth to a very energetic movement. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And And I'm saying, just go for the Americans, because basically, the First Amendment is supported by Chapter 2, verse 256 of the Quran, right? It's the only holy book of any religion that even supports freedom of belief and expression.
How
And
do you feel? Oh, go on.
yeah. And how do I feel? What?
So where is we've got like I'm not giving a prescription to what I think is a problem, right? I'm just describing it to you. Every European country have got American bases in it, right?
Mhm.
And how the law works is that, God forbid, if some American gets drunk on a weekend and he's driving back to the base and he accidentally runs over a European, he won't stop. He will just flee straight to the base.
Yeah, and get off scot free. I remember this young man on a bike, right? And this woman who was the wife of the CIA operative or something, she just drove on the wrong side of the road and killed him, right? I forget his name now, but maybe you
Hello?
know who I'm talking about. Do you know who I'm
Sorry,
talking
Clay.
about?
No, go on.
Well, I forget the name of the young man who was killed.
Oh, Harry Dunn.
Yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
Yeah.
No, they do it all the time, right? And the most outrageous thing was, this Epstein thing. So, so I was thinking of Andrew, who was accused of having sex with a 17-year-old female, right? And it's
Yeah.
like it's not illegal in the UK to have sex with a 17-year-old female. She was already over the age of consent. So what is everybody on about? And Andrew at the time said he was going to fight it. He really was going to fight it because he didn't think he'd done anything wrong. And on the day he was supposed to have had sex with her, he was at Pizza Express Windsor, and he even um, faced a BBC Newsnight interview, questioned by Emily Maitlis, and so he was pretty confident, but
Yeah.
and in the end, I realised what they were doing. That they were saying, this woman, Virginia Giuffre, she lived in California, she lived in Florida, and the age of consent in both California and Florida was 18,
Right.
right? And I think that was why they were going after Andrew. But Andrew was in sovereign territory in his own country, not far from Windsor Castle. But the Americans didn't care, right? It's like, you had sex with, some American female from California and Florida, where the age of consent is 18. So you done wrong. That
Yes.
was what they were going to argue. It was so ridiculous.
It's like anyone living around the world can be judged by American laws, but
Everywhere is America's backyard.
yeah,
Everywhere.
but Americans around the world can't be punished by local law. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And I know what you mean when you say that First Amendment is in the Quran, and I agree with you. I completely agree with you, right? But um, the problem is um, obviously if we all believed in God, done good deeds, we're all going to heaven, and I agree with that. But it's like that's a situation, like politically, militarily, legally, that just can't go on, can it? You know what I mean?
No. So yeah. But you see, the Americans, the founding fathers were heretical Christians, right? I mean, if you look at Thomas Jefferson, he would have been a heretic if he were here, in Europe. I mean, his views. He obviously hated Calvinism, and he denied the Trinity, and quite a few of the founding fathers did too.
Yeah.
Like Thomas Paine, and so you cannot say that America was founded on Christianity.
No.
But if you look at the Declaration of Independence, you will see that a lot of it actually points to Islam. If you read we regard it as self-evident
Yes.
that men were created equal.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I mean, this is to deny deny monarchy, right? Because the whole idea is, men were created equal to the extent that you can run for president if you satisfy the minimum, conditions of being able to run for president. You have to be over 35 and born in America, blah blah blah. So to that extent, it's equal. It's not saying everybody can have, become a president of America, and then this idea of, and that the men created equal were endowed with certain unalienable rights. Which ones? So it was sort of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and the idea is that you can have your life, and it won't be suddenly ended by your absolute monarch signing your death warrant.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the next one is liberty. It's like, of course, you don't have the liberty to kill people and steal their stuff and whatever. It means that you can have liberty within the boundaries of the law,
Yeah.
and you can pursue your happiness, within the law. But what are these certain unalienable rights? I think they can only be found in the Quran. And anyway, we know the first one is supported by chapter 2, verse 256 of the Quran, the right to your opinion and your religion.
Yeah.
So it's so if they think it's liberal, I guess they can call it liberal, but it's actually supported by the Quran. So you can argue that the Quran has elements of liberalism.
Yeah. It's yeah. Is it would it be what do you think is the solution to that Harry Dunn case? Do you think that
I think that he must have been paid off by now.
I think his
Or
family,
his parents must have been
maybe,
paid off.
yeah.
I think that I think they would have paid them some compensation,
Yeah.
just to get them to go away.
It's a problem. It's but you understand like principally that's not like a that's not something that can be sustained for I'm not going to say like I'm not saying it's going to end tomorrow, but um you like they still got permanent military bases in Germany. You know what I mean? Even in Japan. So it's like, how long do you want to be there, bro? You know what I mean?
How long does who want to be where? Sorry.
So the Americans have permanent military base. Well, they say they permanent military bases in Germany and Japan. You know what I mean?
They might have to go. It's very expensive,
Yeah, I hope. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be like the solution to all of our problems, but it's like if 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 the if like a prince of Britain can be punished by a foreign country for something that he didn't do wrong in his own country, that's not like. Can you imagine what that's doing morally to the English man when he sees that? You know what I mean? It's not like a. It's bound to knock your confidence a bit, like, and I just think for it's not good for like when you talk about like the matriarchy and stuff like that, you can't we can't expect like a great man to rise into authority and do what's right if like the top men in the country are not breaking the laws but somehow they're still being punished. You know what I mean? It's strange.
Well, you need to have a patriarchy, because patriarchy would have, a military style hierarchy, right? I mean, the whole point of the military is that, the orders come from the general, and the officers pass down the orders to, the private soldier. And so if something goes wrong, it will be, somebody failed to pass on the orders, they failed to pass on the orders correctly, or they didn't carry out, so you can trace where the problem is, which is why you have this, pyramid structure. Otherwise, if everybody's equal in the military and this fortress needs to be attacked, you can imagine everybody saying to everybody else, you go and attack the fortress and risk your life. I'll see how you get along first, and then we might follow. So obviously, nobody would do anything, and the enemy would win. So you need actually a leader, and the king was well, the king was basically the man who led his men into battle. Somebody has to, be galloping towards the army, to the against the enemy, and saying charge, and whatever, and then there would be men following behind. Because if there was no man prepared to do that, then of course, none of this would happen. So, but now we don't need, this kind of fighting, and therefore, the monarchy is redundant, and its existence is not even helpful to the people who want to. I mean, do they even want to do the job? I mean, Harry kind of thought, well, maybe I want to live in California, and then he realized he couldn't afford his own security or any of that stuff in California. Now he wants to come back, right?
Yeah.
But I think they lead terrible lives. I mean, because they're, one part of their mind would be completely undeveloped. They wouldn't be able to have a political discussion because, people would be afraid of upsetting them, or, or hurting their feelings, or, maybe, making them angry. And I think it's sad if you never have a political disagreement with anybody else.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And they're not serving any purpose. And I know the Americans want the British monarchy to continue, and they spend so much money. I don't know if you watched The Crown. Did you watch The Crown?
No, go on.
Well, I mean, it's actually great to watch, because it's a soap opera of people whom you sort of know, and it's very well done with, very high production values, and so a lot of people who watch it probably, think they know everything about it because it's so realistic and the dialogue is quite good, and but basically, I guess if it was a BBC, everybody would get so angry. It's like, is this where our license fee is going? And we don't agree with the monarchy. They never done anything for us, blah blah blah. But if it's the Americans, that's fine. And obviously the Americans have use for the dominions, or the countries that used to be called British dominions, like Australia, Canada, New Zealand. Right? They're still technically British.
Right. Yeah.
And obviously they want to, park their, naval bases and military bases in Australia and Canada, and, make free with their resources and whatever.
Yeah.
Or just take it over, as Trump was, nearly said.
Yeah, with Greenland.
Going to take it over.
Yeah.
I mean, they are behaving like a bunch of gangsters. I mean,
What do you make of like I asked 2 seconds, sorry. I asked someone in the chat earlier on, and I didn't get a chance to keep talking to him. But so there's a lot of concern about demographics. Europeans are in demographic decline and all this sort of stuff. But Americans seem to be further down that road. So apparently it's I think births in America was 50% white, maybe a year or two ago, and Britain is probably 60%, 70%. France and Germany probably do a little bit better than that. Blah blah blah. Do you think that let's say, for argument's sake, we get to a position where America is 30% white. Do you think they would still be able to act? Well, do you think they would still be who they are in the world? Or do you think they would like?
Well, no, but we. I think the culture changes anyway, right? You know, even when we try to be what we are, we can't because of all these factors that we haven't, calibrated, that we haven't factored in. But I mean, the only thing we can do is, what should we do for the best, bearing in mind our current resources and, position and ability to do whatever. And I'm saying, for everybody, it's not just white people.
Yeah.
It's like, if you want to carry on, you'll have to produce the next generation.
Yeah.
And if you refuse to do that, well, I guess that'll be the end of
That'll be
you.
the lot, of course. Oh, we know.
And the only way, and I keep telling people, look, all these religions that are still around support marriage. And I guess the whole idea is to frighten, men of fighting age to marry women of childbearing age, and stick with their choice and become responsible married parents, and stigmatize people who are gay, people who commit adultery, and or become single mothers. That is the whole purpose of religion, to frighten people from having random casual sex.
Yeah.
And now our religion is about having random casual sex. So, I mean, obviously, the problem should be obvious, but nobody wants to say anything.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be any like prominent politicians publicly addressing this, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it can't be fixed by
Yeah.
more voting,
not.
because it'd be so unpopular, and so it has to be done by argument. And the thing is, sadly, all these white nationalists, they're also hypocrites. If they really cared about their race, they would say, well, we'll just have to, marry a woman of our race, and agree to pay for the kids and stick to our choice, right? If they had, but it's sort of, no, it's the Jews, it's the
Yeah.
Muslims. Don't make us marry a woman of our own race. We'd rather die. And while blaming Jews and Muslims. So and now we've got this culture, that is basically, men and women saying, we'd rather die childless, gay, and transgender than marry you. That's what they're saying, right? Implicitly.
And it's
So obviously the culture has to change.
Yeah.
And the argument can be made, but it has to come from on high, right? It's got to be the BBC saying, this is, we have a very important announcement to make, and, we're what are we going to do? They have to
I know,
say,
right?
yes, we're sorry about all this liberal democracy stuff. It was obviously wrong. Sorry about the transgenderism and the gay marriage and, the swinging 60s. We were obviously not paying attention. Sorry. We're going to do better now. Secular Quranism.
Yeah, that we need technical. Yeah, of course. Do you think like that the older generations, that are like 60, 70, 80, do you think they should apologize to the youth and say, look, not only did we make mistakes ourselves, but we've been teaching you to make those same mistakes, and we're sorry?
Well, I've got a register system that is basically encouraging people to say sorry, right?
Yeah.
So I have this plan to treat unmarried parents as sex offenders, but I'll divide them up into repentant unmarried parents and unrepentant unmarried parents, and there'll be two registers, and obviously the sooner you register, the more repentant you are, and you kind of get some sort of credit for registering your repentance.
Clear,
Right?
genius. Oh my God, Claire. Yeah. Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean,
No,
I do have a system for all these things, and I'm just dying to tell people what I'm going to do for this, for that, and nobody wants to hear. But anyway, I'm so happy you're interested. And,
And I tell you something, you're doing great work, right?
pardon?
You're doing really great work. Don't be discouraged by anyone or anything. I know you said you don't believe in you're agnostic, but I'm not praying that you believe or anything like that. But I hope you get heaven, right?
Well, I have to lean towards it, right? You can't go on so much about religion and just say, um, I mean, obviously, I say it's useful, but if you actually believed in it, you would be able to do more with it, and achieve greater inner peace and more confidence for the future, and just a greater ability and energy to do and say things.
Yeah, yeah,
And with Islam, it's so easy to win arguments. I mean, that's a thing, and I'm just trying to say to people, just try it for a week, to see how you like it, instead of talking, all the Christian nonsense that they can't even explain properly to themselves. I mean, I know they hate me because they can't explain themselves, even to themselves.
yeah. It's very rare that they can even express themselves. Like if you was listening to a conversation among two of them earlier on, and it was just you could tell they were both confused and confusing each other. It's no good. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, there's a lot of cross fertilization between, Maimonides, who, is this Jewish sage who came up with their 13 principles of Judaism, but he lived under Islam. So a lot of his ideas were Islamic. But anyway, the whole idea of Tawhid is something Jews and Muslims can agree on, the oneness of God.
right.
And, and really, the only thing Jews and Muslims are fighting about is which revelation is better. And I think, even with Jews, Muslims win hands down, because Jews have this Torah. Okay, they might like the stories in the Torah better, but it has 36 capital offenses as codified by Maimonides. So their great sage says there are 36 capital offenses under the Torah.
I can't even imagine what half of them would be. Like just thinking for myself, would there be 30 reasons for that? Like I can't. It might be one or two. It might be 5 or 10, but it wouldn't be. I don't think it would be 30. What have you put that? And go with your own interpretation, right? What do you think that is it a number that you've come up with from the Quran?
A number for
Capital offences.
I don't think so. It just says um, execution only if it's in the interest of justice.
Spreading corruption in the land, and
Yeah,
yeah.
and the crucifixion thing, but
Yeah. We can that's like one of the options of like four, right? Yeah,
mhm.
yeah,
So it's actually fair enough, I think. Speaking as an agnostic, and the most important thing is the um um the sexual offences. Because really, people need to know who their mum and dad are, or they'll
yeah.
just be a bit crazy and stupid.
That's so fundamental to a person's identity, mental health. It's yeah, it gotta be safeguarded, doesn't it? Of course.
Yeah, and they obviously don't care. I mean, just taking a different tone about things would actually improve so many people's mental health. I mean, they just can't stand it because they don't know what to believe. The government keeps changing its mind on everything, and um, yeah, they fear for the future, and they probably wonder why they're still around, kind of thing, right? And the
Yeah.
cognitive dissonance of trying to believe all the nonsense the government wants us to believe is probably what's driving them crazy.
Do you think that a lot of the um, I don't, it's not, it's like a chicken and egg sort of thing, but do you think that people not being certain of who their parents are causes mistrust of authority in general, or do you think the government's bad and therefore the people will act bad, and it's like you know what I mean?
Well, I think, in theory, we have, a police force and a court and legal system, but they don't trust it to work properly, right?
No.
And they don't, they think their politicians are lying. So whatever, we hear on the BBC, we will do the opposite because we already assume they're lying to us. So we do the opposite. So it becomes increasingly difficult for them to control us. And, maybe these politicians, but maybe they want to feel that they're doing a good job and that people. So even for their own sakes, they might wish to enjoy better, a higher degree of job satisfaction, and to think that people respect them, which means that the whole system has to change. In order to be convincing, you know, I mean, if the house is falling down and you say, oh, we'll just hoover a few rooms and it'll be better, obviously we don't believe
No,
them.
of course.
But if they said, oh, well, we'll put up some scaffolding or actually, yes, we will have to demolish this condemned building, but we'll build a better one. And you actually do that, then they might, they just need to earn our trust again. And this can only mean repentance,
Yeah.
I'm trying to sort of go for all our corrupt and incompetent politicians groveling on the ground in sackcloth and ashes, and and then people might think, oh, right, they're going to change
Yeah.
now because they've groveled on the ground in sackcloth and ashes.
But it would take a sort of public show of change. Yeah. Because it's not.
Well, the thing with American presidents is that there are actually 5 American presidents who could be doing that.
I know, right? Yeah. Yeah. It'll all be all right. Go with yourself. Yeah.
Well, I think you kind of need to illustrate the brave new world that we're thinking of, and sell the story. I mean, I know a lot of people are afraid to marry, and I'm saying, okay, because property prices are so high, but if we ban usury, property prices would drop significantly, wouldn't
Yeah.
it? Wouldn't
Yeah,
they?
definitely.
Yeah, but and if you want to. Well, if you want to ban usury, you would have to use Sharia. Sorry, but yeah, you'll have to use Sharia. And for the middle classes who are, whining about inheritance tax, which starts at 40%, well, maybe you should be thinking of, Islamic rules of inheritance to avoid the 40% inheritance
Yeah.
tax.
And at least then the law would be fixed and everyone knows where they stand. They know it's not going to change in 10 years, so you can plan for the future. And yeah.
Yeah, and the one party state thing is crucial. So I mean, it's easy for me. I can theorize and say that this is what's necessary, and I'm glad I haven't sort of pretended that you can get to secular Quranism with more voting. So so it's easy for me as a political theorist to just say, well, these are the minimum conditions to make it work. And if I don't even have that, well, forget it. But I'm not going to pretend you're just going to be able to vote your way to secular Quranism. You'll have to do things in a different way. And but you can't use arguments to actually shame a whole bunch of people.
Yeah.
Like do you really want? Are you even marriageable? Do you want to become a married parent or not? And if they say no, well, I'm not going to listen to you then. Why should I listen to you if you're not even prepared to do the minimum of what you're supposed to do to keep the race going or the country going? And it's not like, if you're gay or, obviously too old to be having children. It's like, well, you can support the principle of it, can't
Yeah,
you?
just I once heard Douglas Murray saying that the amount of gays in a society is usually only 2%. And if everyone else was married from, 20 onwards, there'd be more than enough for replacement. and more anyway. It's not really, like, it's not something they would have to decry if other people wanted to be married. You know what I mean? Of course.
Yeah, and they should support it, and they should ban no fault divorce, and they can't even do that. I've been saying, to all these men, and there's quite a lot of men whinging about feminism, and I'm saying the only way to start attacking feminism is to oppose the abolition of no fault divorce, and they can't even do
Yeah.
that. It's like, oh, anything that triggers a feminist, but they won't even do that, and it's such a little thing.
They a lot of men are like that. They like worry. They always make it personal. Where it's like, oh well, if it was my daughter, it's like, yeah, I know, but eventually she's not going to be a daughter, mate. Eventually she's going to have to be a wife, and at that point, all right, if he puts his hands on her or whatever, you're going to have to step in, but you can't just keep treating her like a baby. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah,
I noticed that, but it's like, we are responsible for our actions. It's not like she's being forced into marriage. She can choose who she wants to marry, and she's free to investigate his character for as long as she wants before she says yes. But if you sign a contract, I'm sorry, but it's binding. You know what I mean?
yes, yes, and the contract idea is part of secular Quranism. So every engaged couple has to sign a marriage
Yeah.
contract. So when if they divorce, they can say, you didn't do the thing you said you do in the contract.
Yeah.
It can't be, yeah, I'm just a bit bored and irritated with you. I'm off. It has to be they did something terrible, or they didn't do what they were supposed to do, whatever.
Yeah.
And it's the only way to make people take it seriously. But I guess a lot of men think, well, I don't really want to get married. I'm happy if I occasionally get lucky going to some bar and pick up some woman. I can do that. Then I'll have sex with her, and then I'll ghost her, and then I'll find another one. It's that kind of thing.
Yes.
So it's a culture of low expectations, and obviously women, if they really really want to be a mum, they might just become a single mother,
Yeah.
right?
And the government look after them, of course.
And then, well, it'll get worse because obviously you can't really control your children if you're just a single mum. The moment your adolescent offspring is taller than you, he or she is just going to ignore you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. Have you read a book? Have you read a book by a man called Otto Weininger? Have you heard of him?
Yes, I haven't read his book, but he's is he an Austrian intellectual, a nihilist? Is that
He
him?
was a Austrian Jew, and he became a Lutheran Christian, and
Uh-huh.
he wrote a book called Sex and Character. It is a bit of a nihilistic book. He points out the difference between men and women. He puts a number on the law of attraction,
Mm-hmm.
and then, but towards the end of the book, he pretty much says, and I don't believe this. He pretty much says, the vast, well, he sort of talks principally. He talks about like the masculine and the feminine, right? And he goes on to say that if someone who's completely feminine wouldn't have a soul, right? And he says that he believes in original sin, Christianity, and he says the original sin was that Adam didn't share his soul with Eve, and instead of sharing his soul, he treated her like an animal and slept with her. So he says the only solution of reversing that would be global abstinence.
Well, everybody not have
Everyone
sex.
not have sex, not even for the purpose of reproduction, right? Oh,
It's a kind of shakerism, right?
right. It's but on like the online right, you've had a profound impact, right? Where like these trad men will say, oh well, we gotta men gotta be like you said, authority and blah blah blah. But they never quote the end of the book. And he has this idea that like Jesus was the perfect human being and he was abstinent. And
Because he died a bachelor.
right, yeah. And like all the ideas leading up to his conclusion, you could get behind. You could say, oh well, yeah, men and women are different. You've got different roles in society, blah blah blah. But it's like he sort of like over. I believe we all got souls, right? But he sort of like over spiritualizes it, reads way too much into things, and it just comes to a conclusion. And he ended up killing himself. And I just think, and I can't understand. I can't. I'm not saying it was wrong that but it's up to him. He's dead now, right? But like Jews don't believe that. Jews don't believe in abstinence, bro. Come on, you know what I mean? And but I think that
Well, I think.
that definitely. I'm not saying only that book have done it, but like it's like that idea that men and women are not just different, like physically, but like essentially. You know what I mean? Where it just drove them apart so much. I used to be married. I was married to an Arab woman. That's why it didn't work out. But but it's not. I know, like we were saying that some men don't want to be married or they don't they have low expectations. It's not difficult. It's not difficult to be married. You know what I mean? You've got responsibilities and stuff like that. But as long as you, like you said, just do what you said you would do, and everything will be fine. You know what I mean?
Well, I think the problem is the the premarital sex, because I guess once you try it, I guess you think, well, I may want the sex, but not the children,
Right.
and it's cheaper without the children, and and I think you will have to kind of disapprove of it to kind of incentivize people to think, oh, I'm so in love, and they're both virgins on their wedding night and that kind of thing. That would create more of an interest in marriage than kind of sexually jaded people who've tried so many people and have really high body counts. Of course, you can't expect two such people to be enthusiastic about marriage.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It's really quite simple. I just don't know why people, there's obviously nobody in charge that cares anything about, protecting even their own country.
No.
You would have thought that the government was like, well, we want lots of, citizens in this country so we can tax them or, whatever. It's like they don't even care.
Yeah, there's not even a selfish reason to. They haven't even got a selfish reason to promote it. That's right. Yeah. And the strange thing is, like you said,
Yeah.
we haven't got enough workers, so we'll bring workers from abroad. But because of the way the culture is, within a generation, they stop having children. You know what I mean? Like someone
Yeah.
from Pakistan comes here, they have 4 children. Their children have 2 children. The following generation, they might not have any. And it's not like it's not sustainable. It's not good.
No, but I'm reminded of Edward Gibbon's Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, which the founding fathers read. So basically, Gibbon said it was Christianity that made Rome decline and fall, and AI confirms this, and all the founding fathers read that book,
Yeah.
which is why they separated the church from their state. That's my theory, and I'm sticking to it.
I think I agree with you because the Romans got married before Christianity. I'm not saying it's just marriage that like made them decline, but they had morals before Christianity. It wasn't perfect, but it wasn't like Christians tend to say like, oh, Europe was just this barbaric, filthy place without Christianity, and there might be some truth to that, but it's not. The Romans wasn't backwards. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it was the rest of Europe at the time that was, very
Yeah, the
backward,
North.
and then they had to be converted to
Yeah,
Christianity, and they did because they kind of recognized, Rome as the empire,
right.
and that was why everybody once upon a time they were all Christian and all Christians were Catholic
Yeah,
because of the Roman Empire.
yeah. And it was the first. That was like the first time Europe was really united under anything. Like, could you imagine? Like Chinese people would never, like living in China, would never say we need to abandon Confucius values because obviously every time China have been united, and well, I don't know this to be true, like, but I'm just assuming every time China have been united, it have been because of those values, right?
Because of what?
Confucian
Sorry.
values. So
Yes.
if you ask Chinese people to abandon values that united them, it would be they could imagine it. They'd say, well, you're asking us to fracture, and so I think that might be part of the reason why Europeans just love Christianity, good or bad, because they just can't imagine a world where they're not united. You know what I mean? Even if it is united into
Well, but
one.
they weren't, right. I mean, they were always fighting each other.
Yeah,
The European wars of religion was, that was when they were all white and
yeah,
Christian. They still fought each other. I mean, you could call Christianity the World War religion because the First and Second World Wars were started by
yeah.
Christians fighting each other. So, uh, I think it's because it's so vague that of course people are saying, does that verse really mean what it says? I have my theory and everybody has their theory and they fight each other about the different theories. Well, the Quran is really clear. You can't really, or you don't need to come up with weird theories to explain the meaning of words.
No,
And this is kind of the the most important rule of draftsmanship is to be clear. So the other side are not going to say, oh, this word means this thing I want it to mean, and it's not this thing, this meaning that you think it is, and but so that's why you have to be clear, and then you have to anticipate, how people might, you know the exceptions to the rule, and the Quran always does that, right? Even the cutting off hand thing. It's like, well, if he says sorry, forgive him.
yeah. As long as you give the property
You
back
know,
first.
yeah. So there's always this, even the crucifixion verse. If he says sorry before you capture him, you forgive
Yeah,
him. You know,
it's just about making things right, isn't it? You know what I mean? If you act on good intent, even if you make a mistake, as long as you try to make up your mistake, it'll be fine. But don't continue. You know what
yeah,
I mean? Don't continue doing what you know's wrong. Yeah,
yeah. Just have the humility, and I suppose the prostrations. Muslims do keep them humble. If you kind of, on all fours on the ground, it will keep you grounded,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And I was just thinking today that all these sort of crazy people who kill their kids, like that woman, what's her name, Lindsay
Oh
Clancy.
God.
I was just thinking. Maybe if you did pray 5 times a day, you might not be so bipolar.
Yeah,
Maybe, just maybe.
yeah. If you just had, like you said, if you was just well grounded, reminded every day of who you are and where you're going, maybe you wouldn't be having, like you said, bipolar and thinking crazy things. I know, right? Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of drink and addiction issues is like, why am I not happy all the time?
yeah,
It's like, well, you're not meant to be happy all the time. Maybe you're meant to be unhappy some of the time, so you actually work out your problem.
yeah, yeah. It's like years and years ago, people would come to that conclusion where, like, if your life is messed up, you're messed up some way. But now it's like pain and suffering is not, it's not associated with, obviously, if tragedy happens, people fall into hardship. I'm not blaming everyone for all their problems, but it's like there's not a lot of introspection and like questioning, what have I done? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah. So this idea of suffering is sort of like, yeah, if you're in pain, you did something wrong.
Yeah.
What could you have done wrong? Well, just start with the no height laws, right?
Yeah.
Start with those. You can remember them, can't you? Children, and they can. And the great thing about the no height laws is that the first two no height laws are an echo of the first and second commandments.
Right.
No idolatry, no blasphemy.
Yeah.
And I've heard rabbis say that if you don't obey the first and second commandments, then you'll just you will more easily break the other ones.
I think that's true.
Mm.
Yeah. Because you've said, I know I've heard you say this a lot, that if you believe in God, you're expecting to be rewarded. If you do bad and you believe in God, you're expecting punishment. If you don't believe in God and like cosmic justice, then you're more likely to do what you want. Of course. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so easy. But they want to believe some complicated history. I don't know, the Trinity and all that.
Yeah, it's not good.
Mm. Well, it's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Okay, it's been lovely talking to you too.
Well, I hope we'll have more conversations in the future, and much for coming.
Thanks for answering all my questions, all right? Keep up the good work. God bless.
Thank you. Take care.
And you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.